Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today and really looking forward to this as we dive into converting CAD floor plans to GIS format. Today, primarily, we're going to be focused on ArcGIS Pro. We'll be spending quite a bit of time in ArcGIS Pro to share how we can get those floor plans converted over. So just an overview of what we're going to hit on today. One is the introduction to ArcGIS Pro. I'll briefly talk about some of the basics there involving the ArcGIS Pro environment. Then we will be looking at importing and georeferencing CAD and BIM files in ArcGIS Pro. We'll give a brief overview of ArcGIS Indoors. That's essentially where we're going to be importing our data to. And then we'll be covering specifically in a little bit more detail converting CAD data and also then BIM data into the ArcGIS Indoors environment. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into ArcGIS Pro, and we can begin to explore, first of all, our introduction here with ArcGIS Pro. For those who are not familiar with it, wanted to just kind of talk through some of the basics if you're new to it and some of the things involved here. So you'll notice it's a little bit like maybe look and feel similar to AutoCAD. We have maps, and first of all, we have a project here that we're in. And so I go to projects and I can see that I have different projects. And if I go to this catalog view, I can get to there under view and catalog. I can see on the left, I've got maps that are part of my project. I've got toolboxes, databases, I've got styles, folders, and locators. And so these are kind of, every project has these different components, but primarily what you're going to be focused on is databases and maps, which is kind of what we'll highlight for now. So one thing as we talk about databases, these are file geodatabases that we're going to be working with today. And you'll typically work with these on your local machine. If you need to create a new file geodatabase, it's easy to click in the blank space and we can do a new file geodatabase, and then we can give it a name and it'll create that for us there. And within these file geodatabases, as we kind of explore these a little bit, we can see that we have what's called a feature data set. And then within that feature data set, we have some feature classes. And so the way to think of that is this is kind of like layers. Each of these is kind of a separate layer that we can pull into ArcGIS Pro, into our maps. And then the data set is kind of just a collection of feature classes. It's kind of a way to look at that. Important thing and something different from what differentiates GIS from CAD is that with GIS, we need a coordinate system defined for everything. So in this case, for my indoors here, I have what's a spatial reference, and you'll see that I have a project coordinate system defined for that particular data set. And then every feature class underneath that data set follows that coordinate system there as well. So another thing in ArcGIS Pro, I'm going to jump over to one of my maps here that I have open. We'll notice that in the very top right corner, I've got a little kind of says I'm signed in there. I am signed into an ArcGIS online portal, and I've got that there where I'm currently signed in, and you will typically need to be signed into a portal. You can access licensing through the portal. You can pull data in from the portal. So in this case, most of the data I'm working with today is all going to be stored on my local machine. However, if I wanted to pull data in either ArcGIS Online or say ArcGIS Enterprise portal, I could pull those in that way. So I can also manage different portals that I have. In this case, I've got several of them that I have access to, and I can manage those as needed. Also, as I mentioned in the catalog viewer, we're able to just drill down in the different details, and we can perform some functions there within the catalog view, but a lot of what we're going to be doing today will be focused on our map view here within the map. So next, what I'd like to look at now is exploring CAD files and BIM files in this. If we look in the catalog viewer, let's just drill down to some of these that we want to explore. So first of all, let's explore. I have some CAD files here in the folder. And as I kind of break these down, I can see that it's a .dwg extension. I can double click on that and it's going to open up the various different feature classes and layers within that CAD file. And so this one has quite a few that I can see there. If I explore this other one, I think it's just got a handful of them in there. And this is typically what you'll see when you explore a CAD file in the GIS environment. You'll typically see these standard annotation, multi-patch, point, polygon, and polyline layers within there. For BIM files, we kind of go back up here, we can see if we have a BIM file, a Revit file, in this case, we can explore that, double clicking on there, and we can see different data sets within that Revit file. So what we're going to be looking at today primarily is the floor plans, because we're going to be importing those and georeferencing those. But as you can see, I've got a lot of their options within BIM files of architectural layers, infrastructure, mechanical. There's a lot of different options there, and you can provide a lot more information through the BIM files. So next we want to kind of talk about as we bring these into our maps, adding that data in. So what I'm going to do, I've got a couple options here. I can go to my map menu up top. I can go to add data, and I can add data in that way if I'm going to pull in some CAD data, or I can right click on my map up here and I could say add data in there. So as I go to my CAD file, I'm going to explore that, and I can add these in, and I've already done that, but I could pick one here and add it into my map, and I've already got those down here that I'll expand and show here. So we've got the CAD layer here, and what's interesting here is I want to add these in, but then a lot of times these will all be turned on, and so I can quickly just kind of highlight all these holding down the shift key, and I can right click and I can say turn off, and you can see it turns off all those, and that just keeps my map from getting too busy. If I've got too many layers turned on, that's what helps kind of keep it cleaned up. So I'm just going to turn on one of these here. I'm going to turn on floor overhead for now, and what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and zoom to this layer location, and it's going to calculate the extent and move me to that location here in a minute. So what I've got here is I want to explore the projection of this, and it's important that we have a defined projection when we're dealing with CAD files, and we have to define the projection. Oftentimes when you get these, there will be no projection assigned. As I go to the properties of the layer and I go to spatial reference, this one I actually have one defined already. I just chose the Central Texas state plane coordinates for that one. But I can actually define that projection if I need to in order to locate those files in the real world. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about here a little bit more is how do I exactly accomplish that? You know, if I want to actually reference that information. So what we've got when we initially kind of show where we're at here, when we bring in our CAD data, all we have is the DWG file, but if we define a projection, then we get a world file and we also get a projection file that comes with it. And those are created, we'll just show you here when we come in. I'm going to select the CAD data on the menu button up top here. And first of all, I can see I can define my projection. So if I would have pulled this layer in and I went to the properties and said unknown spatial, unknown projection, I would use my define projection tool here. And you can see it comes over here on my geoprocessing bar on the right, and I can have tell it which feature class I'm looking at. In this case, I can choose any one of these, and if I georeference that, it's going to save it to the rest of them. Then I'll choose my coordinate system. I can either choose the coordinate system of my current map, or I can define one in this here, define the coordinate system box. I can even type in a shortcut number if I want, like 4203 as we see here. That'll narrow that down. So once I have the projection defined, which is the important first step, and if I don't know what that projection is, I need to maybe contact whoever it is that provided those CAD files and make sure I understand what coordinate system those were in, if any. Sometimes they might not be in a coordinate system. They're just, started at a coordinate of 10,000, 10,000, say. But in this case, if I want to georeference that, I can use these tools here under the georeference bar. And that's where we can actually go through these and locate. We can use move to display to kind of get what we need, where we need to focus that and where we need to put that particular building. So in this case, if I want to, I'm going to zoom back here to my other building layer, which was properly georeferenced. I'm going to show you how we can move these to the correct location. So if I just highlight one of those, I'm going to hit move to display. And that should move my CAD layer there. It's going to think for a second here. There we go. And now what I can do, now that that moved that here, I can turn on another section there. That now I can use these tools to scale. So I can scale that down as needed, make that smaller, or I can rotate, or I can move those around in order to get them to the correct location. So as we can see here, and sometimes it'll take just a minute for that to update. But I can also, again, use the rotate, move tools to get that right where we need it. And then once we do that, once we get it oriented where we need to have it, then we can save that in the georeferencing bar here. And once we save that, what that's doing is that's creating these files that I explained earlier, PRJ and WLD files. And so that's important that we have each CAD file that has those associated with it. Now, one shortcut thing, because we know that CAD files typically show one floor at a time. That's like in these examples, O2 is the second floor of the building, O1 is the first floor of the building. As a shortcut, what I could do is copy this WLD PRJ files. I could copy those and paste them and rename them according to each of these other files. And those would then be georeferenced properly. I wouldn't have to go through the manual steps on the map. You have to do the manual steps initially so you can get those files created. But once you have them created, you can kind of copy those and it'll reflect as well in your other files as well there. Okay, so I wanted to talk briefly now of let's see, of the ArcGIS indoors capabilities. So this is something that we get a lot of questions on. You know, what is ArcGIS indoors? What can it do for me? So I'm gonna move my screen over here, and we'll kind of take a look at a little bit more about what is involved with ArcGIS indoors. So ArcGIS indoors is it's basically a collection of tools and features that are in ArcGIS Pro, but then also you need to have an enterprise portal or ArcGIS Online to publish to, and to be able to share your indoors maps out. But it can be used for site plans, floor plans, space planning and utilization. We can use it for asset inventories. We often get questions about, can people tie in their existing asset systems or work order systems with indoors? And typically the answer is yes. However, it depends on who the provider is, but typically we're able to make that happen. Indoor positioning and navigation is also a feature that you can add on to the indoors. There's ArcGIS IPS, another extension that's available. And then basically the biggest use that we see is, or a big use is, not only with space management, like I mentioned, but also mapping and wayfinding. You can actually create route networks and navigate people throughout buildings with turn-by-turn directions. Then lastly, it can also be used for real-time IoT monitoring. A little bit more. So your data is curated or, edited, just like we're doing today, importing CAD floor plans. Your data is curated in ArcGIS Pro. What we're going to do is we're going to move that data from CAD into GIS, and then we'll update attributes, things like that. In order to run these indoors tools, it does require an indoors enabled portal, like I mentioned earlier. But clean CAD data and BIM data is a must. This is so important. I can't stress that enough. You've probably heard it from others before, but very important to have clean CAD data before we can import that into the indoors environment. And then, of course, we can publish web maps and apps and make those available through those shared portals. So now I want to look at actually converting some of this data over. As I mentioned earlier, we can, basically convert those CAD files and bring those in. And what I wanted to show now was basically I wanted to show a template. So Esri gives us some tools that we can use for making this a little bit more streamlined. The first step is always going to be getting our CAD files, the projection defined, and then georeferencing those to the proper location. But once I've done that, take a look at our other one that we've already got georeferenced. And don't be alarmed if it does take some time for when you turn on and off your CAD layers in ArcGIS Pro. Sometimes it does take a few seconds for those to be able to be visible or refreshed. Right now, I've got most of them turned off, but you can see how I've got this CAD file georeferenced, it's scaled, everything looks good there. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to explore these and find out what's on what are these different layers, what do they represent, and which ones do I want to import into my ArcGIS Indoors environment. So to do that with ArcGIS Indoors, Esri provides a Excel template, and I wanted to kind of explore that a little bit here today. So for this example, we'll just kind of start here. The order these tabs are in, I'm going to kind of go in reverse order. First of all, you're going to specify your source files. So you're going to say, where does my CAD file live? And in this one, I realized I forgot the DWG extension on there. But you need to define the path of where the DWG file lives. And then, as I mentioned earlier, each CAD file is usually specific to one level. So you're going to specify the level ID, what you're going to call it. That's what Indoors is going to refer to that level ID as within that CAD drawing. The level properties tab, let's take a look at that. So I'm going to tell it, okay, which facility does this level belong to, and what's my level ID? And you'll know this, the building, the facility ID is the first part of the level ID. That's important to keep that organizational and hierarchy structure. We always start with the site, which in this case would be demo. The building could be main, and then the building number would be 0118. Or I could say main could be part of my campus, and then the facility is 0118. And then I'm going to add the .2 because this is level 2. I'm going to give it a short name and then put in some of this other information. Some of it's optional, some required, but you can kind of look through the documentation on that that Esri has. Next, we want to look at facilities. So I have my facility here, 118, and I want to look at what are the properties of that. So we've got the site, which is my larger campus, and I can give it a name for my campus. And then my facility ID, like I just explained, I'm going to use that 118 number. And this also includes name, address. You could populate that information, the year built, total levels. You can put all that in your Excel template here, relative height and elevation information. And then I'm going to look at annotation field. Now this is where you can specify annotation if you want it to import. And let's say, for example, room numbers. You want those to import from CAD and populate that in your units layer. Then you can define that here. And then lastly, in our template, we can look at our layer details. So in this case, it's asking me, essentially what CAD layer shows the facility outline. And in this case, it's SP gross is the layer that we're using. And then it wants to know, okay, which is for levels. And so this is why it specifies lines. These are polygon layers, and then these would be line layers. You don't necessarily need both. You need one or the other. In this case, we're using polygon layers for these, and we're specifying what that is. And then I've got units defined, which is going to be like my rooms. Again, polygons or lines. And then what's really important is my details layer. This is what's going to pull in and show my walls and windows, door swings. All of those are going to be part of the details feature there. So once I have my template populated and I've got that ready to go, then what I can do is I'm going to run the geoprocessing tool, and we'll do import CAD. Whoops, gives me a lot too many options there. I'm just going to search for indoors, and I'm going to import floor plans to indoors geodatabase. This is the tool I'm going to run for this. And what I'm going to do when I run this, I'm going to define my target features, which I have in my map already. And I'm going to tell it where my units are, where my details are, my details layer, and my levels, and my target facility, and my facilities layer. And then I'm going to say, these are optional sections or zones. I'm going to leave those blank for now. Then I'm going to tell it where my template is. So if I go here, the template I just showed you and we just filled out there. Now it's looking for a unique ID delimiter. Typically, I'm always going to use a period for my projects that I work on, but you also have these different thresholds you could set regarding door closures and what it recognizes as a door. And then square footage is going to be the unit of measure working here. So I can go ahead and hit run. I don't know if I didn't test this one ahead of time, but we can view the details as that runs. We can kind of see what it's going through. If there's any error messages, it'll pop up here and it'll tell you what is going on with your Excel file that maybe you need to look for or change there. So, so it looks like it's skipping over a few of those, and it'll give you a reason. You can look up those warnings if need be. So, but that's the import tool using that Excel template, which is a really handy tool. I didn't mention this, but you can import as many levels and as many facilities as you'd like. So you can populate this spreadsheet and just fill it up. So I would have a DWG drawing for each level. And then under facilities properties, I would have each row would represent a facility for my campus. All right. Next, I'd like to look at BIM data and see what's different about BIM data as we go to kind of explore that. So, and bring that into ArcGIS. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to import a floor plan from Revit files, and I'm going to look at bringing in our BIM files. So I've got a folder here with my Revit file in there. And what I'm going to do is drill down to the floor plan layer. And I can see I have that here, and I want floor plan polygon. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this into ArcGIS Pro. And I'm going to look and see what I have here. It's important for me to look and see if this has a spatial reference. So this floor plan polygon, if I look under source and then spatial reference, I can see that it does have a spatial reference assigned to it already. If it didn't, I could certainly assign that under the BIM data menu option, and I could go to define projection, and I could assign that here, either selecting the current map, or I could define the projection here with the various options that I'd have. So what I want to do, though, is since this already has a defined projection, now what I'm going to do, if we, let's actually zoom to this location of where the file came in here in the middle of the desert, but I need this to go to its proper location. And I have the building address. So as I go, I'm next going to go to the georeference tab. And then I see some different options up here on the georeferencing for the BIM data. And I'm going to go to locate. And here I want to search by address. So I know the address of the building. So I'm going to punch that in here. I'm going to copy and paste it actually. So this takes me to where the location of the building is supposed to be. Now, as part of georeferencing, next what I want to do is, because this file came in somewhere else in the middle of the desert, I needed to move to this location. So in order to do that, I'm going to use the move to display. And so I'm going to select that, and you'll see that it brings that file right into my current display, right where I need it to be here. So, but I can see that it's rotated at 90 degrees. So I'm going to use the rotate tool here, and I can either rotate this manually, or there's another trick. I can hit the A key and I can type in the degrees of rotation that I want to give to it. Again, that's hitting the A key on my keyboard. But for this one, I like that rotation, kind of just eyeball it there. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close that for now. I'll leave it open, but I could add a base map in there if I wanted to. Imagery, I could use that imagery, which would be easier to georeference. But for this purpose, let's just show how to kind of move that with my georeferencing feature. If I want to scale that down a little bit, I can. We'll just scale that a little bit, and we'll just rotate it, give it a little bit more rotation till we get in a spot where we like it. Okay, and then we'll move that down just a little bit more. And then we will go ahead and accept that. I'm going to accept that by hitting save, and that will save my georeferencing for there. And now any of those other layers or data sets that I bring in from that BIM file are now going to be georeferenced in the proper location. So that's what's nice. What it's doing there is it's creating a world file, and we can see that here. It just created that file when I saved my georeferencing. And so that's how we georeference the BIM files. So once I have that georeferenced, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that. Let me close my georeferencing here. And I'm going to import the BIM file into ArcGIS Indoors. Now for this one, I don't need an Excel template. That Excel template is just needed for CAD files, importing those. But I'm going to do, again, we'll search for Indoors, and we see there should be an import BIM to indoor data set. This is the tool I'm going to be looking for now. And again, I'm only going to see these tools if I'm licensed for ArcGIS Indoors with this, using a portal and licensing with ArcGIS Indoors. So I'm going to do import BIM, and I'm going to tell it which BIM file I want there. Target units. I'm going to tell it this is in my Indoors feature data set, and this is what I made using create Indoors data set. That's another tool. So I created these, and they're in that model. Now I'm going to hit my target details, and again, levels, kind of walk through what my needs are there. So facility ID, for this one, I can basically, let's say for this building, if it's the science building, I'm going to do SCI 01, just to kind of give an abbreviation. Then for the facility name, we can do science building. Now ground floor name, what this will do is it should read from the BIM levels. It will give you a drop down on which level do you want to assign your ground floor on, which is really helpful. And so you'll see that in drop down. You can select whichever one applies. Usually it's level 1. And then the rest of these are optional. You can tell it polygon use type field. You can define some parameters within your BIM information. If you have room information there, you can kind of define those here. And then you just hit run, and that will import those BIM files. And the nice thing with that is you've got, it's importing the whole building at once. So very useful, very good feature and a good tool to be able to look at. All right, in conclusion here, before we wrap it up, I did want to explore just what does that look like, kind of a sample once it's in the Indoors environment. So in this case, what I wanted to point out was we want to define properties of our map layers. So I can define my facilities and levels for my map properties. And then I can also do the same thing for my details under this floors tab. And I can say I want level ID, and same thing with units. We'll go ahead and define those. Again, level ID, and same thing with levels. Yep, level ID. And then I don't need to do that with facilities, but what you'll notice on the top right corner, it recognizes that this is an Indoors enabled environment now, and I can select a facility. And I can click on that, it'll zoom to it, and I can see which level I want. And basically, as that level is updated, I can see that information very easily in the indoors environment. And then I can start to do all kinds of work in the indoors environment. I can publish and share those maps. We could add points of interest. I could also start creating a routing network. So once I'm in that environment, there's a lot that we can do with that. And I would just mention that Esri is continuing to pour a lot of updates into their indoors tools. And one of those features that's coming, it's in the beta version right now, is the ability to split rooms and update floor plans very seamlessly in the indoors environment. So some exciting things coming down the pipeline there.